so I'm Anna Harrison with Drinking the Movies, and I'm here with Asad Farooqui, who wrote and directed Congratulations, which was a short film that is playing at the Atlanta Film Festival, um, and it was great. So first of all, the film opens with your character Amir auditioning for the role of terrorist number two. So, and what something I really loved about the movie, was that it is bookended by these audition tapes of terrorist number two. So you have the audition, and then you get to know Amir and all his family and everyone involved, and then he goes back and he's just terrorist number two again. So I was wondering, if you could talk about, like, was that drawn from your real life, and what was it, what inspired the bookends of that?
Well, thankfully, I've never auditioned for a, a terrorist role
It's great.
because I'm not really an actor. I have acted before. I actually got the very first time I acted was at Emory for Theater Emory, and for my professor Michael Evenden, who's a
Oh my
theater.
gosh. Sorry.
You know him?
That's really unprofessional of me, but oh my gosh, yeah. Sorry. I know I've taken many a class with Michael Evenden.
Okay, so Michael Evenden was my professor and my director for this play called What I Heard About Iraq, and he, gave me like a lead role, and it was just the most, I don't know, it was just the most fun process ever. Just the collaboration that goes into a theater, and it was just great. And then, but too bad it was senior year, and then I graduated, and then I left that. It's always kind of been there, a little acting bug, but for the purposes of this film, when I acted, it was mainly just because we have such difficulty finding South Asian American actors to this day, even here. You would think, with the diversity push that we have now, there would be more opportunities, but there aren't really. I mean, not to the degree that you would think that are available. And so whenever I've auditioned people, you'd get like two or three people to show up, and many of them just don't have the experience, that you might need. And so many times I've like filled in. So I was filling it coming to the point. And I had never auditioned for a terrorist role, but man, do I know a lot of people just through audition tapes that I've seen, because many people, what they would do is they wouldn't actually come in physically to the audition. And it's so interesting. I've held most of my auditions in the Rich building at Emory, including for this
Classic.
film as well. Yeah. And they would just send in their tape or their demo reel. And in the demo reel, I would see a lot of like terrorist stuff, or just, they try to say something in Arabic, and I felt bad, but I was like, this is just, it's such a problem, because this is how, most of us are kind of viewed. This is what we're good for, or whoever's writing the big shows that they're giving these wordless roles to people. I mean, those are paid roles, and so many people, if they're not getting an opportunity, they probably don't love doing that, but they'll do it. And so that's kind of where it came from, is that, I maybe we're a little changing in the right direction, moving in the right direction, but we're still not fully there. I still see shows where the idea of the Arab or the Pakistani terrorist is in full flow. And so that's why I was like, why not do like a audition where I'm the struggling actor, and his audition gets, obviously, is disturbed by his mother's call because she needs something in the kitchen that she can't reach. So yeah.
So what was the casting process like in a bit more detail for this, other than yourself, obviously, because that was pretty
Yeah.
easy.
So it's an ensemble piece, so it's like 8 actors all together. And it was a couple of the people I found just through like phone calls. I asked some people around. So the community is fairly small, which is interesting. And if I'll ask, my sister, hey, do you know somebody, or does your friend circle have someone? And then I can, maybe if they haven't acted, maybe they've hosted something for like a community event or something. And so the lady who was playing not my mom, but the other main role. She's done a couple of community events that even my father was affiliated with, I think, for a community organization, and that's how I just got in touch with her. The gentleman who played my father was, it's interesting. He was being an actor, and I know him from 2 or 3 years ago when I auditioned him, and he came very professional. He did a great job, I thought, especially in congratulations. And Mabruk is the actual word for the film. And so I got in touch with him again now, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm down to do it." And then I found out that he's left acting because his agent here said, "Look, you have an accent, and I think they kind of wanted somebody with the American accent." So he's like, "Well, you get the whole package." So then he left and he went back to, I think, IT or whatever he was
Oh
doing.
my gosh.
He needed benefits because he'd left that and was fulfilling like his dream of being an actor later on in life. But now I think he's back. And then so I called him up, and then the other gentleman I also found from another short film that was about to happen but didn't, and it was also like a South Asian American. So I had his number, and he works in India. He has some big position in India with Starbucks or something, and so I just called him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll be visiting during that time because his family lives here," and so that's how he came. And then Munhar, who played the main antagonist, who's playing the medical doctor, he's a SCAD student that Nassim, the lead actress, the main girl, told me about, that she had just shot a film for him because he's a directing student, but he's really been an actor in India for a while and done a lot of theater. And he just talked to me about it, and I didn't audition him because I didn't have anybody else. And so I was like, "Yeah, come on." So it's like that, which which is fine because I actually, what it does is it you don't always get necessarily, you know, uh, 25 people to pick from for each role, and sometimes you don't have anybody to pick from, but then it's about, well, how well can you work with them, and when you're in those positions, what will you do? And thankfully everyone I thought was quite good and easy to work with and quite professional. So I thought it worked out. I thought the best part about the film was their acting. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So no. I mean, I thought everyone had great performances. So when you're working with people who haven't really acted before, I mean, how do you approach directing that?
So I asked them how they would say something and and then they say it their way, and I allow them to play with it. And if they can't completely get it, then I talk more about objectives, which are, I think, more actor driven exercises, as if this is where you're coming from, this is kind of your backstory, this is where you are now, and see if that works. But even if that doesn't work, the third option, which I think is the best option, is that you de-dramatize it. So it's almost like somebody reading the weather report or something, which I like. I personally prefer less kind of the melodramatic heightened acting. I prefer the more Scandinavian style acting. If you've seen any Scandinavian movies like Avaki Kursmaki, where they're just saying everything regularly and they're telling you, "Oh, someone died," and then you move on. And there's no emotion.
Mhm.
And that usually tends to work because then they're just saying, and it kind of becomes funny. And for me, this film is as dramatic as it is a satire, so it's somewhere in the middle. So I actually prefer the de-dramatization. So that's how I kind of work with these actors, depending on where they were.
Well, it worked. So good job. So you mentioned that you only took a theater class your senior year of college, and you have a business degree, right?
Yeah, from Emory, I have a business degree and a comparative religion degree.
And then you went on to get an MFA from Columbia. But how did that, like, how did you get bitten by the bug, so to speak?
Well, I worked in corporate America, and I mean, that really bites you, and it's a bug bite that doesn't seem to like go away, and it just keeps hurting. And I don't know, I just got depressed. I just didn't enjoy the corporate life, and I don't think many people enjoy it, but I really didn't. it really didn't suit me. And not just that, it was also the people that you work with, the kind of culture that exists within a company. And I just didn't like that. There's a lot of fakeness in corporate America, at least when I was there. And I couldn't act, I just couldn't put on a face every day. And it's interesting that, I mean, I've seen so many good actors, like they can't act, and all the time. It's human beings can act, but they can't. But they're the best actors because they do it from a place of emotion and something
Mhm.
inside. And I just could never be there and act as if like everything's okay. It was just all weird to me, and I really hated it. So just out of like necessity, I looked up like how to make short films, how to write them, how to format them. And so I found some website, and then I just started writing like random stuff. I enjoyed writing dialogue a lot, and made dirt cheap like $200 films, and made like four of them within a period of like 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
Um, and then I just applied to Columbia randomly because, and thankfully I didn't miss the cycle that year, because it was the same. It was literally 2 months after I'd made those 4 or 5 films, and I got in somehow. It was a lengthy process, but it happened, and I'm glad that it did, because then I got to learn like feature writing and pilot writing, and even like how framing and directing and stuff like that, which I didn't have any clue about, frankly.
The scene where Amir is kind of reluctant to admit that he's getting an MFA is gold. That was hit close to home.
Did,
Not-
did you get a BFA at?
no, I'm a film studies major, so
Uh,
it's not quite the same, but it's I
yeah,
also, I always feel like I have to um predicate that or something. I always, because they have the concentration in film and media management with the business school. I always feel like I have to tack that on at the end to be like, no, 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 like I'm legitimate. Don't worry about it. Like, like a normal film studies major isn't legitimate. So anyway, that was a good moment. Thought that was
yeah, I
fun.
mean, it's like you're always trying to avoid the conversation, and you're just trying to
Mhm.
switch the subject because you don't want to feel bad. Because I feel like what ends up happening is, unfortunately, about most theater, film, and art students, is that we take this dramatic dive into this world, and try something new, which no one else would dare to. But yet we are some of the most fragile people, and we know ourselves that I know that where this will go, and I'll get hurt, and I don't want to, and I don't want to feel that way. Let me change the topic right now, because that numbskull is not gonna change their
Mhm.
way
Mhm.
of speaking. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, so in the film, this is a very inconsequential question, but I was really curious about this. So in the mirror, a bit in the film,
Yeah.
how do I say that? In the film, Amir has a bit of a cold. Was
Yeah.
that planned because it was very realistic?
No, I got a cold. I had a reading for a pilot script of mine. They were doing like this theater style reading the night, and this was pre-COVID. This is late January of 2020,
Hmm.
just before COVID, and I was reading out loud with my cast, and Nassim was actually next to me, and it went incredibly well. And I lost my voice after that, and I was drinking tea, and this was just one day. This is the night, and then we had one day before the shoot started. And that morning, I lost my voice. I couldn't say anything, and then I had to obviously gargle constantly, drink a lot of fluids, drink a lot of tea. And then I knew that, look, I'm not going to get over this. And I just don't have the money to be calling this off and bringing people back again. And I don't know if they'll come back because they're not working actors. They're not like Nassim and Manhar are working actors. They know the acting life, they know what it's like. So those two are fine. But then most of those adults are not doing that, and to expect them to come back randomly, I can't do that. So this is the voice. Some of it thankfully came back. I'll continue to gargle, and we're just going to add the component of the cold. I've always wondered, like, imagine if you were, I've never done this, but I'm sure there's some great Shakespearean actor who's played Hamlet or something, and he got a cold. So now
Hmm.
what do you do? Like, what would you can't call it off. There's no understudy. You have to do it. And so you just add that into into the play or the film, and because people get colds, I mean that's normal, and especially now this year. But
Yeah.
what sucked about it is I think people might have thought that, oh, this is like he has COVID or something, and no, it's just a cold. And but what made it hard was it started getting better by the third day. It was a 3-day shoot,
Uh-huh.
and then I really had to make sure that it stays there so it stays consistent. But thankfully, if you're saying that it was fine, then great.
No, I thought it was pretty funny. Like, you're about to film something and you sneeze, happens to all of us. So
And then the
no, it was
cop mirror moment
yeah.
where you have inner moment, yeah.
Mhm. Classic. So how do you go about directing yourself in a film? Feels very complicated.
um it's funny. My professor at Columbia, Ramin Barani, and big shout out to him because he was nominated for an Oscar for White Tiger.
Yeah.
Um, and he told me that you can always direct yourself at least, and a director can always at least play themselves. So while this isn't me and this isn't my life, I feel like the sarcasm that he has is something that I've applied to my life quite a bit. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll go with that. And I kind of know how the character sounds, and I think I'll be okay if I just stick to that. And what I wanted to do was make sure again that the the loudness comes from the other characters, and I stay very tame and calm. Um, because you don't want to have just a shouting match of two, but then they sound the same, right? And it's like you want the characters to be different. Like you can't just write dialogue that sounds great if it's the same for everybody, and that happens sometimes in writing. So I was like, no, I want it to be very tame and calm, so you differentiate with the other characters. um and that was just so I knew the kind of the character objective, and I've usually known that for the other films where I've directed myself, and then I just mainly focus on the other supporting actors because I've also written it, so I kind of have it stayed in my mind for so long that it's like, yeah, I should be okay, hopefully. And if I go off course, then obviously I can always call it cut and redo it. But thankfully, I read the lines out loud to myself a lot. I practice on my own, the facial expressions and all that as well, just throughout, just so I'm always ready. And that's so I don't have to focus on the acting part as much as I do the directing part on the day,
Mhm.
because I feel like those supporting that supporting cast really has to deliver, because that's, I think, for most movies that's what makes a movie good. I think the character, the protagonist, is usually just the lens for the
Right.
audience, whereas the other characters are what really bring it alive. So kudos to them. Yeah.
So, something that I thought was super interesting about the film is a lot of times, like at these family gatherings that happen, there will be a divide, but it's a generational divide. So it's like the young, open-minded people versus like the codgy old farts.
Yeah.
Um, and this one, it's not really generational. It's a bit more like geographical, where Amir and Jamil kind of butt heads about certain things and politics and all of that. So I was wondering, I don't know if you could just like expand on that and how that came about.
Well, India and Pakistan have never gotten along. I think that's
Hmm.
about as simple as I can put it. I was born in Pakistan, in Karachi. Both of my parents were born in India. And so I've always kind of had like this, I've always been kind of in the middle, right? It's like, well, am I really Pakistani? I'm not Indian. But my parents are from there. And you see this when you attend a lot of these parties, that happen within the community, that the men will always talk about Pakistani politics and how India is harmful in some way, shape, or form. And I knew that I didn't want to get into too much granular kind of detail about that, but I wanted the basic stuff out there.
Hmm.
Like Imran Khan, who's the prime minister right now, and this and that. But what I was showing was that the two people, the two men who were visiting, are very nationalistic, and you'll meet men like that from both countries, from India and Pakistan. These people just happen to be from Pakistan, and they literally carry their flag with them at all times. They must have it in their pocket. I'm sure there's like some small version of a Pakistani flag in their pockets, and yet they live in America. And so it's like this bubble that I've kind of grown up in here, where when you talk to them, it's like they've never even been in America, and yet they've been living here for years because they keep so much tabs on what's happening back home, which is very interesting, but yet also detrimental to like your own kind of growth as a human being, because you're less open-minded about other people. You only want like Pakistanis within your own circle and stuff like that. And that's kind of what I was going for, is that these people have only hung out with Pakistanis. They love Pakistan beyond belief, or at least they think they do, but yet they won't ever go back. They'll only work
Mhm.
here because there's more money, there's a lot more prestige, a lot more status in America, but yet they'll continue to talk about Pakistan like it's. And so my character was just kind of poking them more than anything else, because of kind of what happened and what he found out. And I don't want to give that away if people
Mhm.
watch the film. Um, so it was about that. And it's always interesting if I ever show this to Pakistani people and they don't know what they're getting into, or even Indian people, what they take away. Is it the politics that they come away with it, or is it the main character and kind of his issue and his problem, his dramatic problem that's there? And you get a bit of both. I feel like the younger generation understands that it's the character, whereas the older generation can only focus on the politics. And how dare you
Mhm.
say this about Pakistan, and how dare you make this comment about India, and this and that. The film is about anti-nationalism as far as those conversations are concerned. It's like, you're living in America for a reason. So why not, first of all, just don't talk about politics if you can spare everybody. But if you have to, you may as well talk about the politics that impact you the most, which are, your local politics. Did you vote for, did you vote for the senators here in Georgia? That's a very important conversation to have. I think
Mhm.
that impacts us deeply every day. So that's a better conversation to have. But yet, these people will continue to stay the way they are. That's never going to change. But that makes for an interesting film, I think,
Yeah.
because they're full on characters.
No, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. It's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Big hard ball. Okay, what do you have a favorite dish or food to eat at Eid?
Yeah, I mean, the biryani, if I can get my hands on it, if I ever attend, and it's so interesting, it's Ramadan right now, so we're
Mhm.
2 weeks away. Um, I'd do anything for good biryani. And then my father makes great kheer, which is rice pudding, and if he ever, I try to get him to make it as much as possible. So if we can, hopefully he'll make some this year. But particularly his rice pudding. That's what I love. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really enjoyed the film and I really enjoyed this conversation.